Have you ever thought you were being helpful only to find out the other person felt completely unheard? Welcome to the gap between intention and impact. This is an important topic to get into for the narcissist and how the narcissist brain works because there are a number of issues actually to cover in this one. We're going to go over three different things, so stay tuned. Before we get further, go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button. All right, on we go. So we've established the analogy of the operating system. So just a brief recap if you haven't watched my other videos. If you have, check them out. We go into it much more detail. But you can look at the narcissist brain as being like a different operating system than the normie brain. So imagine you live in a world where everybody uses computers with Microsoft Windows, and you find out that you're using a computer with Mac OS. Well, they both work as computers and can do lots of different things. They don't interact with each other correctly. And it's important to understand the different operating systems so you're not trying to do all the same things your Windows users are doing on your Mac computer, because that won't work. Similarly with the narcissist brain, it's a different operating system. There's different wiring, a different series of cause and effectual loops and interpretations. And this is one of those things that can cause a lot of challenge in the narcissist's life as they're trying to become more aware, change things for the better in their relationships, because the way we see things, me being a narcissist, and interact and respond seems totally normal and natural to us, but to others, often it gets taken in a totally different direction. So, like as an example, I had a friend who was telling me one day about some real challenges that they were having at work with their boss and some of the work dynamics, and they were really upset about it that day, and they were telling me about it. And what I did was immediately launched into, here's a plan of how we can fix it. All right, if you do this and then they do this, you can try this instead. And I got a couple minutes in and looked over at them and could tell from their facial expression that this was not hitting the mark. And then they said, I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to listen. Now, that never occurred to me that they would want me just to listen, because as a narcissist, and the way my brain works, with not having much empathy and not experiencing emotions in the same way that normies do, it would never have occurred to me if I was in their shoes that I would want to tell somebody all these details and just have them just listen to me. Like, that still doesn't make sense to me. I understand that people want that. I still can't quite understand why that's valuable. But what I do now know is that it is something that's valuable to a lot of people. But it doesn't happen naturally for me as a narcissist. I'm getting better at understanding that the way I perceive the world and these interactions is different than normies. But my brain immediately goes into that sort of big picture view, problem solving view, and often just scoots right past that emotional connection or that emotional listening that the other person's actually looking for. So that's number one. Number two of the three things we're going to talk about, what this actually does is it starts to reinforce itself. And so what I mean is as a typical narcissist who's an adult now, like myself, you got to think of how many interactions, micro interactions, big ones, small ones, I've had over this lifetime to this point. I mean, that example I gave is a real specific one, and that doesn't happen all the time. But there are many interactions like that that maybe aren't as obvious to myself and to the other person as that one was. But countless interactions like this happen. And what ends up happening is you either get a direct message from the other person, or often sort of an indirect message of, yeah, you don't seem like you care, you're cold, you're unfeeling, and things like this. Even though in those circumstances, I may be trying to show up and give the best value I can. But because of that gap between intention and impact, often the message I'll get back is, or the narcissist gets back, is, you missed it, and it's just because you don't care, you're a cold person, unemotional, all of that filters out to basically there's something wrong with you, or you're a bad person because you don't care. And not that that's their intention either, talking about that intention to impact, But that's the message that gets continually given to the narcissist. And what happens is, as we know, no matter how true or untrue a message is, if it's repeated often enough, we start to believe that it's real. So this creates this loop of feedback that we are constantly given the message that we don't care, we're cold, we're unemotional, we don't try, all of those type of things. And we start to believe that. Slowly but surely, we start to believe that that's just who we are. And there's really nothing we can do about it, because even when we try our hardest, that's still the response we get. So it's not like, I don't mean it in those terms of like that the blame or the responsibility is on the normie in this situation, the other person. But it's also a reality that happens. And it builds into sort of a downward spiral of getting worse and worse. Because, hey, now if I believe that message for years and years, if somebody's expressing something to me and I think this is one of those times, I just potentially believe, well, I'm just like a cold, uncaring person. So why should I even bother trying? I'm just going to get that response back. So that's obviously a depressing thought, but it's something that a lot of narcissists go through, whether they know it consciously or often it just is in there unconsciously because of just those countless repetitions. So third thing I wanted to cover was, what do we do about this? How do we bridge this gap once we're waking up and becoming aware and wanting to actually create relationships and have interactions where the intention better suits the impact? So for me, where I'm at in my journey and what I have found works the best, maybe there's better things I'll figure out down the road, is to be upfront about my intentions and to acknowledge when the impact doesn't match my intentions. So that might look like, back to the scenario of that friend kind of venting about the frustrations and upset at work. They tell me the things and I may say, well, I can really hear, like, well, let me back up. So they say those things, I identify this is one of those scenarios. That's the first step, noticing, making yourself aware. And not that that's as easy as I just made it sound. It can be very challenging, but that's the work, right? So as you get better at noticing these moments, often at first you notice them after the fact, but eventually you start to notice them in advance when you really pay attention. So I may notice, okay, this is internally, this is one of those times when they're expressing something and it sounds like they're upset. So I wonder if they're looking for something from me that's different than what I have to give. And so in that scenario, they would say those things, about their work and stuff. And I might realize that and say, wow, this really sounds like something that is very impactful. Or I can tell that you have a lot of feelings around this, or you're really upset. If I can tell that they're upset. Sometimes it's just like, I can tell there's feelings. So I might say that. I can tell you have a lot of feelings about this. And I want you to know I care because you're somebody who, have a relationship with, or you're important to me, or whatever it is. And I want you to know that as far as someone just listening and having that empathy, that's really something I'm very weak at or I'm not strong at. So if that's what you're looking for, I can sit here and just listen. Or if you're looking for some of that empathy, this is probably something you want to tell somebody else. However, I'm really good at strategic thinking, stepping back and look at the big picture without emotions, getting in the way, coming up with a plan of what you might do. And so I would love to do some of that with you if you think that would be helpful. And just know that because I don't have that ability to listen and empathize, doesn't mean I don't care. Someone like me, a narcissist, caring just looks different. And the way I show care is by that strategic thinking and that big picture view and so forth. So if that would be satisfying or useful for you, let's do it. And if not, then you should know that. And so, I don't know how that strikes you. I know at first when I started doing that, it felt very awkward. And I think some of that awkwardness is just being upfront with who I am, because as we all know, narcissist is a very commonly used negative term out there in our culture right now. And then on the other side of that, or the other part of that, is that I'm being being vulnerable or exposing sort of that, that vulnerability or that where maybe I don't have it all together, things that narcissists really don't like doing. So, yes, when I say it, it probably just sounds easy. It's definitely not, but keep noticing, keep paying attention, keep working it, and eventually it'll start to happen for you. And what you'll find, or what I've found, is that while sometimes I get a different response, maybe negative response from the person when I say those things, it's a whole different ball game of negative response or response, because it's often actually not negative, than what I was getting before when I would just do the narcissist thing and dive into the strategic thinking. Or if I didn't do that, I would think, oh, they want something from me emotionally, and then I would just try to fake it. So being upfront and just telling the person, what is, as it is, just honestly, actually causes for less of that negative feedback loop, or in fact, a new feedback loop being inserted, where it's not that I'm just some bad, uncaring, cold person. I'm just different. I've had a different operating system, and that's okay. That doesn't mean I'm bad or I'm wrong. It means I'm different. And it also means that maybe I'm not the person for them to talk to about this. Just like if somebody came to me and was telling me about what was going on in their car engine, and, the piston this and the rods this. And if I'm somebody who doesn't know anything about cars, then I'm not the person they should be talking to about that if they want like input about how to go about fixing their car. Like, and that's not a thing that's charged, in terms of like I'm a narcissist or not. It's like, hey, I don't really know cars, so I can listen. I have no idea what you're talking about in terms of the details, and I can't be very helpful in terms of helping you figure out what to do to fix it. So it's really in that same vein, though there's a lot more charge and messiness to it because we're talking emotions. So coming up with some strategies like that while you're in a good state of mind to do that before you're in the moment really also helps, because then you've kind of got that in you, so you don't have to come up with it in the moment. You still got to come up with the particulars, and it's still not going to be easy the first few times you do it. But let me tell you, you start doing that, it'll start making huge differences in your relationships, sure, but also in your own feelings of self-worth and self-esteem. You start to feel more at ease, less anxiety and panic in those emotional situations. So I would recommend giving that a try. If you're new to that, start with somebody who's close in, who maybe you can even prep in advance and tell them, hey, I learned I'm a narcissist, this way, give them whatever amount of detail and say, so this means that sometimes I'm going to say things back to you when you express things to me, and it's going to sound weird or different, but just know I'm working on becoming more authentic and real in my responses to you. And I think, that's going to work out better for both of us. So bridging this gap isn't about being perfect or even finding the right answer, because Lord knows I've spent countless thousands of hours in my life trying to figure out how to be perfect or how to give the response I think the other person wants. But really it's about being honest and learning to navigate those differences. And hey, if I screw up, whatever that means here, but if I don't remember, if the person does it and I jump right into the strategic thinking, or I seem uncaring, and then they tell me that in the moment, or if later I think about it, I'm like, oh, I just did that thing again. They probably were like totally missed by that response. Then it's going back to them or in the moment and just acknowledging again, oh, wow, I see I did that narcissist thing again. And sorry about that. I'm working on getting better at it. And then go on to tell them, the thing like, I don't do that well, and this is what I'm good at, etc. You'll find that it'll make a huge difference in your life, your own sense of well-being, and the amount of ease you have versus anxiety. It'll also help the other person, in all likelihood, have a better experience with their relationship with you too. So that is my tip for today about how to have a more satisfying life when you're somebody with who's a narcissist, or when you're somebody in a relationship with a narcissist. All right, you guys take care. Remember, subscribe, hit the thumbs up, post any questions or comments you have down in the comment section. I'd love to interact with you guys, answer any questions, hear where you're at in this journey. what thoughts it brings up for you, and things you might do, strategies you have in place to deal with the distinction or that gap between intention and impact that are working for you. Because I don't know it all. We're in this journey together, and I'd love to learn from you guys too. All right, take care.